The best way to protect the environment we share is for citizens to take an active role in making land use decisions. While most people get involved when a development is about to affect them personally, it is better to intervene in the earlier stages of the planning process. This video will help both those activists who intend to build a future of their dreams and those who want to avoid a nightmare in their backyards. In both cases, citizens will want to follow these steps.
The first thing you should do is find out all the facts, because maybe you are concerned needlessly. After you find out all the information, you may find out that, gee, this isn't as bad as I thought. Maybe this is okay. But if you get the facts and then you find out your concerns are justified, then you need to have those facts at hand so that you can talk to decision makers and present a credible reason why they should also be concerned and why they might want to not decide so hastily, or they might want to reconsider. If it's a local land use issue, you want to talk to your planning commission, you want to get minutes of meetings where the proposed land use was being discussed, you want to see site plans, any kind of documents that were prepared and presented to the decision maker, whether at the state or local level. You can get copies of those things, and then you should read them and make yourself knowledgeable.
In order to be effective and credible, you must have the facts. A list of local planning commission phone numbers is available at the League of Women Voters of Michigan website. Step 2. Identify the decision makers. Most land uses are subject to local zoning ordinances. Some land may be under the jurisdiction of the federal or state government. Many uses require permits from another level of government. If you're not sure, check the League of Women Voters website for the list of environmental groups and those familiar with specific issues, such as solid waste or oil and gas.
Not only the specific elements of your ordinance are important, but actually the goal of the law. When your community put together an ordinance for your whole community, a zoning ordinance, it put into its master plan what it wanted its community to look like in 20 years. There's a lot of goals stated behind the ordinances that you have, and when it comes down to it, that's the real guide for local decision makers on what should happen. You go back to your goals and see, what really did we write this ordinance for? What were we trying to achieve? And you can invoke that when you're arguing for your community's welfare on a particular project. You can say, as a community, we sat down and we decided this, and we need to stick to it. And that goes back to your community's master plan. Your community needs to have goals for what it wants its community, what you want your area to look like in 20 years, and lay down the rules that you think the community should follow. And if you think about that with your issue, you can point out how this affects a lot of people in your community, or why there's a problem, a government official or a developer may not be following the law, and that could hurt your community.
Your local zoning map will show you where certain land uses are permitted. The local zoning text will describe the specifics. Be sure to check both to see if the intended land use is in fact permitted. If the proposed use is not permitted under your zoning laws, it cannot take place unless an amendment, variance, or special use permit is granted. All of these procedures require public hearings. If the site is not properly zoned, plan on attending the public hearing to present written or oral testimony. Consider contacting your local elected officials to voice your concern before the hearing. If a site plan is required, there will be a review meeting. This is another opportunity for public comment.
When you go in and get the facts, some of the facts you need to get are who makes what decision and at what points in time, because there are federal laws that apply, state laws that apply, local ordinances that apply, and you will want to use all of these as you go down the road.
Even with local land use issues, if you're trying to protect an area that you think is a wildlife area that should be preserved, you should look for things that are regulated at state and federal level as well, as such as endangered species and things like that. So a lot of issues are regulated at more than one level. And so you should be looking at all of these things. And if one thing doesn't work, there might be something else that works. Find out if there's anyone else who shares your concerns or your views, and see if they can start attending the meetings where these decisions are going to take place, or if they can write or call or do newspaper stories or letters to the editor or whatever, so that you can have more than just your voice. You can do it alone, but it's a lot easier, and lawmakers and decision makers listen a lot better if there's a lot of people telling them the same thing.
You maximize participation by educating and informing the impacted public. You hand out flyers, you have press releases, you call news conferences, all of that. And you go door to door, literally, and you make telephone calls.
Reach out to a lot of people that you may not know personally and you may not assume to be on your side, but a lot of people in your community live there, they have children there, they have the same concerns. So there's a lot of ways that you can go to the media, but I think the important thing is knowing that the voter, the local resident has a lot of power. You don't need as much money. You just need to build community support and build media attention. And that really depends on knowing your issue, knowing the process, and being clear about what you want.
Getting legal assistance as early as possible in the review process and the public hearing process is crucial. You do not want to wait to bring that type of technical assistance into the game only at the point of litigation, because the expertise that they can provide is crucial. Very crucial, and even attempting to avoid having to arrive at litigation.
If you firmly believe in something and you feel that the decision maker isn't doing what the law, ordinance, or whatever requires, then maybe it's time to talk to an attorney.
The best advice is always to try to get something done without litigation, whether that's through the administrative process or through public participation, lobbying efforts, anything like that. It's much easier to get things done there than it is in litigation. But if you've gone through all those steps, if you've made your best effort and no change is forthcoming, then it's time to think about a lawsuit.
Get involved in the political process. Find out where elected officials stand on the issues and let them know what you think. A League of Women Voters Candidates Forum, or Voters Guide, is a good place to learn a candidate's views. Volunteer to help candidates who share your views and support them financially, because elected officials are connected in some way to every land use decision.
If they're not making the decision themselves, then they appointed the person, or there's some way that they're accountable. You know, there's nice ways of putting political pressure on people, especially if you have a lot of people on your side. I found that they're just people like everyone else, and that if we don't have good people running for office, then we're not going to have good government.
I think it's a good thing for people to run for office, from people from all walks of life, and to throw your hat in the ring and run. Even if you don't necessarily get elected, you can often make some change that way. But even if you don't want to run for office, you can still support particular candidates and perhaps let them know where you stand on an issue, and that you're only going to support them if they will support your issue. It's important to know when they're running for office and what the political scene is.
Be knowledgeable and persistent. If one thing doesn't work, you shouldn't just throw up your hands and give up, because there's always other avenues to explore.
Persistence is what really is important, I think, in these kinds of battles. Just keeping going, getting all the information you can, and being persistent, not giving up.
You don't give up. It's ongoing. It's a living process. If the facility actually goes into operation, then you have to watch and see to it that they maintain the standards that are set in the permit. Any violations that you notice or become aware of be reported to the proper authorities.
Following these 8 steps will help any citizen to be more effective in protecting our Earth. Remember, the sooner in the decision-making process you get involved, the more successful you will be. St. Clair County is a flat, wet, and boggy area on the east side of Michigan's thumb. This story of land use activism begins in 1989.
Our area in St. Clair County, near where I live, was an area that was under consideration for a possible low-level radioactive waste disposal facility. And before that time, I had never written a letter to the editor. I had never been politically involved at all. But when I saw that headline in our local newspaper, and when they said that there was going to be an informational meeting in a few days at the local school in the cafeteria, I made sure I was there.
At this meeting, Terry learned that in order for the nuclear waste disposal site to be built, there would need to be better drainage. This meant that the mostly natural Mill Creek would have to be dredged.
I had been concerned about dredging and channelization projects for many years because of what they did to natural creeks, to the fishing, to the wildlife habitat. And I had grown up in Yale, I'd grown up playing on Mill Creek, and it was a special place to me, and I wanted to do what I could to prevent it from just becoming a big ditch. Decided I could put maybe the next 2 weeks of my life into fighting this proposed dredging project and helping organize people to turn out for the public hearing that was held on the Mill Creek project. And we were very successful in that. We had a couple hundred people turned out up to oppose it, and we thought we had made an excellent case against the project, and that we were going to be listened to, and the project would be stopped.
After hearing all of these people voice objections, the Intercounty Drain Board decided to go ahead and determine that this project was necessary anyway. So after that meeting, a number of us were just thoroughly upset by the fact that we felt like our voices hadn't really been listened to.
Even though the nuclear waste dump issue faded, the Mill Creek Coalition continued their effort to stop the dredging. After 10 years, a compromise was finally reached with the Intercounty Drainage Board. Instead of dredging the full 17 miles of the creek, less than 2 miles near the border between Lapeer and St. Clair counties was affected. The rest of the creek was cleared using the more environmentally friendly techniques of George Palmater, known as river restoration. Both areas are being monitored to compare their effectiveness.
They were going to look at increased water conveyance. And we thought there were other criteria that should also be considered, like the preservation of wildlife habitat, the aquatic life in the stream, the prevention of erosion. We had a concern about downstream flooding. So we formed another group. We put together a project called the Mill Creek Volunteer Monitoring Project to go out and collect macroinvertebrates and gather data on the stream width, depth, sedimentation, that sort of thing. So we were able to get the DEQ to come out and train the people in our area within like a week or two so that we could gather baseline data before the river restoration stuff was done and before the dredging of the 3/4 mile was done. And then we've collected data ever since. And we were able to get a Clean Michigan grant through the Surface Water Quality of DEQ to publish the data that we've found, because the photos and the data that we've collected has been pretty dramatic. And we've been asked to speak at a number of conferences and things so that this data can be shared with others in the state who don't have any idea that a natural creek and stream can be turned into a big ditch.
That it can cost a lot of money to destroy the environment. And that was just exactly what we experienced on Mill Creek. It was going to be a $4 million project that would turn this natural creek into a big channelized drainage ditch. And we could both save tax dollars and preserve that natural creek by spending a lot less money going in and removing the obstructions and doing what we've now come to realize is called river restoration or stream corridor restoration.
Environmental justice is another issue.
Environmental justice refers to the disproportionate siting of polluting facilities and hazardous facilities in communities of color and low-income communities. And as a result, a lot of these communities find themselves more heavily burdened with pollutants and environmental hazards than non-minority and middle and upper income communities.
The north side of Flint is an area of high and moderate density low-income housing in close proximity to heavy industrial land uses. An industrial incinerator, a rail yard with open coal and gravel transfers, a metal shredder, and numerous junkyards all have their impact on this area that many people and an elementary school call home. Flint Genesee United for Action, Justice, and Environmental Safety is a broad-based community organization fighting to clean up these businesses and keep watch over their operation.
This is the incinerator. There is the fuel pile, and that direction straight across for about a half a mile you'll find Carpenter Road Elementary School. It is the case that we get an enormous amount of pollution, especially in damp, hot weather, from the fuel pile. The stench is a combination of sour mash and manure. And from the stacks, what we get is pollution in the form of lead going into the atmosphere.
Urban renewal cleared a brownfield in Flint's inner city, which was so polluted it required a waiver from the Department of Environmental Quality before it could be developed as a moderate-cost housing neighborhood.
A number of people that are moving into these homes were not made aware of the toxicity that existed in the soil prior to making their purchase. This is the development that has received $8+ million in city dollars for the infrastructure. Primary concern is arsenic that is throughout the soil, coming in at 14 parts per million. There are also several hot spots of other toxins that are in here that are so hot that the DEQ has ordered those to be fenced off and for the soil not to be removed. See these kids that are out here playing in the soil? They have no idea that the soil in here is contaminated and the damage that it can do to children this young. And people think that they bought themselves a dream, and it has the potential of turning into a nightmare.
People in Milan Township, Monroe County, found out in December of 1999 that General Motors Corporation And the Ann Arbor Railroad proposed to build a new rail yard transfer station for 50,000 cars on a 1,000-acre cornfield, which was zoned agricultural. Despite strong opposition from many residents and the County Planning Commission, the Milan Township Board was intent on changing the zoning from agricultural to industrial.
I've lived here my entire life across from the site. My parents bought the place 70 years ago, and I certainly didn't want it here. My husband is dead, and my son wishes to farm, and so it meant a lot to me.
We had township forefathers that knew ways to protect the land, and they used ordinances to do that. And we have really good, strong ordinances here, but unfortunately we had some township officials that heard the sweet song of the developers.
This is a poor township. We don't have much money, and they figured $150,000 a year was great. Well, we have other industries in our community. We know what they do, and you can't do anything about it. And surely the same thing was going to happen here.
People in our group had to become instant experts on different topics, and several people read the zoning ordinance book cover to cover, and having never even known really what a zoning ordinance book was, or others got real familiar with the master plan for the whole area, to be able to challenge some of the information.
I remember just flipping open a phone book, flipping to anything that seemed remotely near, anything to do with trains or zoning or land or and just you just start calling people. I called Lana Pollock's office, and I met Conan Smith, and Conan Smith said, "Oh yeah, okay, we've got lots of information about this. We can help you." And we made that connection there, which then connected us with Michigan Land Use, which connected us with Environmental Law and Policy Center, that connected us with a whole host of people.
After a spirited campaign, the referendum was passed just 2 months later, in February of 2000, by a township vote of 403 to 350, which stopped the zoning change.
So we called it a classic David and Goliath. I mean, a group of neighbors getting together and going door to door, little Davids out there trying to spread the information as best we could, and Goliath, big time lawyers, General Motors, railroad, all those things, $80,000, videos, beautiful maps, and David won.
In order to secure their victory and exercise their newfound power, Milan area concerned citizens decided to take control of their township board.
So we asked for people to volunteer to run for the various offices, and I ran as trustee. And we had opposition that was for the project, and all of us won in the primary. Our platform was to have open government and do the wishes of the people. Lo and behold, when the election rolled around, all 5 opposed to the project won. Well, I think this was meant a lot to the project, because they weren't going to get any cooperation from the local township board. And it's been very busy. We're new to this, but we have some exceptional people, I think, on the board trying to do the right thing. And not about money, it's what the local community wants.
They want controlled growth, and that is all about your planning and all about how you have a master plan written, and all about how you put that back to the community and take their input. That's what we're doing now.
That's why it's so important that people know that this can be done. Because once you find out, there's not all that many people out there that are doing it. But I think it's basically because they don't know they can do it. And so once you get involved, you can win, and that's what keeps you going.
citizens certainly can win. In certain instances, we have won. Persistence is critical. The intensity is critical. Technical assistance is critical.
The League of Women Voters and the Michigan Land Use Institute, and there's a group called the Michigan Environmental Council, they are a good place to start to find other people to talk to, because you're not alone. There's other people having the same problem. They've come up with great answers. They want to hear from you too. There is a great network of citizen-based efforts around the state, and it's growing, and you should be a part of it. We are investigative journalists. We go out there and break stories about problems in the government and problems in your community. We also help citizens do the same thing when they're facing development that they don't want in their community or that is bad for their community, or if they want to work on changing state laws. We help them dig up the facts and get organized and develop a campaign so that they can win.
The Michigan Environmental Council is a coalition of organizations in the state, both public health, environmental, and faith-based groups. If you have a problem in your district, you can call the Michigan Environmental Council. We will help you identify the people that you need to talk to get a problem solved, or help you identify potential legislation that would change that problem for the entire state. Because Michigan is a home rule state, local land use decisions are critical. That's where you come in as a citizen. Your input and your voice in that process helps determine how all of our land in Michigan is developed. When we pass farmland protection legislation in Michigan, it has to be adopted and implemented at the local level. We have several laws already on the books that are not serving the people of this state because they have not gone through that local process. We need you to implement the policies that we work hard to get enacted at the state level.
I'm Pat Donath. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Michigan. The League's mission is the informed and active participation of citizens in government. We hope that you have been informed by our program and that you will become active in the planning and zoning process in your community. If you would like further information, please contact your local League of Women Voters or the League State Office.
We named ourselves the Milan Area Concerned Citizens, and that's the group that led this charge.
It sounded better than just calling ourselves the Mushrooms.
Can't put this on tape, John. The mushrooms. The original. We called ourselves the Mushrooms because they fed us and kept us in the dark.
I wasn't going to say that on tape, but
you can
go right
edit.
ahead.
You can edit.